Hi, so this is another one of our sessions for Careers Week. Today we have got Jacob Wildfire, who is with us, who is currently a PhD student at St George's, who's going to tell us a little bit about his journey so far and the reason he's taken the choices that he has to get to study a PhD at the moment. So thank you very much, Jacob, for volunteering to come and participate in Careers Week and give insights into your particular path that you've taken. Do you want to tell us a little bit about the research that you're doing at the moment? So just to fill us in a little bit more about what that's about.
Yeah. So currently I'm studying antimicrobial resistance, which is obviously, people call it the silent pandemic. It is probably the biggest threat after COVID facing the NHS, but it's more of a slow burner. So my work is looking at MRSA, which was a big problem in the 2000s. It was that very scary bug that everybody was really worried about. And looking at its genome and scanning the whole genome for genes that might stop the spread of antibiotic resistance genes. So what MRSA can do and what other bacteria can do is do this thing called horizontal gene transfer, where they pass genes to each other. It's the same as if I gave you a gene for being able to glow, for example, and then you could just take that from me and start glowing. They can do that via viruses. So I'm looking at whether or not there are any genes that exist within MRSA genomes that naturally stop the viruses from being able to do that. So that's what I'm doing so far. I mean, I'm only 5 months in, but it's looking positive.
Yeah, no, sounds like fantastic work and something very important. What led you to decide you wanted to do a PhD? What was your journey to that point to decide to think that that was the right time for you? So tell us a little bit about your studies that you did previously at university prior to coming to St George's, and perhaps for some people doing a PhD takes a lot of thought to think, do I really want to lend myself to that situation? Am I ready for that? So talk us through why you felt that was something that was right for you.
Yeah, it's a big commitment. So before I studied at St George's, I was studying at UCL for 4 years, doing an integrated master's in cell biology. And whilst I was doing that, I maybe got to third year and I started to worry, what am I going to do? I didn't really enjoy the dissertation that I was doing and I didn't do very well in it. And I thought, am I going to get to the end of my master's and then just not use this degree that I've worked on? And then at the end of my third year, going into my fourth year, I got given a project that I really enjoyed, which was on aging and Drosophila and neurodegenerative disease, which obviously I'm not doing now, but I really enjoyed the lab that I was in. I really enjoyed the process of exploring hypothesis. And I went to a conference as well that UCL Biology Society holds every year. And I found myself actually able to engage with the speakers and talk and provide my own inputs. And it was so much fun. It was so much fun talking to these scientists who are esteemed their academic careers and be able to talk to them and talk about their research and talk about what I was doing as well. And I found that I really, really enjoyed it. So, I mean, obviously my research was impacted by COVID, the advent of the COVID pandemic in the beginning of 2020, but I was able to do my master's degree. And around Christmas time of 2019, I'd already started applying for PhDs. And I knew that I wanted to work in infectious disease because I really enjoyed studies on that in my undergraduate and then in my integrated master's year. I really enjoyed it. So I started to apply for the LSHTM, London School of Hygiene, see if they had any PhD scholarships or anything available that I could do. And I found that they are part of a scheme called the MRC LID Doctoral Training Scheme. So that's a interdisciplinary scheme between the London School of Hygiene and St George's. And I found a great project that I really liked with my supervisor, Jodie Lindsay, who studies MRSA, and my other supervisor, Gwyneth Knight, who is at the London School of Hygiene, and just hoped that I'd get in. Managed to get the interview just before the first national lockdown. So I was able to go to that in person and come here and begin studying. And it's not a decision that you should make easily, because it's 4 to 3 years depending on how you do it, and it's a big commitment and it's really hard. PhDs are difficult, but if you enjoy it, then it's its own reward. So that's how I've come to be here in this beautiful dark office.
Looks very nice. Looks very, very nice. It's got windows, which is great.
There's also 1 point. Thank you.
Yeah, no, sorry, you carry on, Jacob. Sorry, there's a slight
Luckily,
delay.
not in my section though. I suppose one extra thing is maybe partway through my studies. Oh, I see. Okay. So there was 1 point in my studies where I was lucky enough to be part of another lab and do an internship at the London School of Hygiene and give molecular work and lab work a go. And it was just really fun. So, I'd really recommend to anyone, if you get the opportunity to do an internship with a lab or in anything that you're interested in. For me, it was microbiology in a wet lab. Take it up, because it's really fun and you learn essential skills and you can put it on your CV, which is, always a bonus.
Yeah, no, fantastic. I was going to ask you actually, Jacob, what process did you have to go through to get your PhD? You mentioned about, because sometimes people have to put together their own kind of proposition of what they want to research. How did you go about applying, and why do you think you were accepted?
So the way that I did it, which seems to be a little bit different from some of my friends who also started studying the PhD, a PhD at different places, the way that I did it was the MRC LID puts up a big list, comprehensive list of all the potential projects that supervisors have submitted. I then found the one that I liked, and I met up with the supervisors and we discussed it. And then I had to write essentially a research proposal, which was about 2,000 words long, detailing what I wanted to do with this research, what the benefits of this could be, this research, and a little bit about myself as well, my interests and why I thought that I would succeed. That gets sent off to the MRC LID board, who then choose student project matchups, basically, or submissions that they like. So the supervisors are also like, God, I really hope they get through. They have no say in this. They've just come up with an idea they like and believe in, and then hopefully a good student comes along and takes it further. So after that, the MRC LID board choose, I think, 25 candidates that they like, and then, or maybe even more, might be 70. And then you come in for interviews, and I think 12 or so get chosen to actually go on and receive funding. Some other places do other schemes where at first you just apply and you just say, I really like research, and you do your personal statement, etc., etc. And they choose you based on you alone, and then they assign you a project. This was slightly different, or some labs will already have funding and they've already got the project, and then different students apply for that. And there's no sort of competition element where you and the supervisor are trying to get funding. You've already got it. Mm-hmm. That was different for me. And the reason why I got chosen, I think, is because I'm just good in interviews. I don't know what it is. I'm just good at talking and filling space. I found there were spelling mistakes and things like that in the actual document that I submitted. So I think what really got me through is my actual presentation and speaking during the interview. But also I had some master's research and this internship under my belt, and was also part of the Biology Society at UCL, which, as in I was the academic secretary in my third year, which really I think also helps. So yeah, I'd advocate to get involved in anything like that, internships, extra research, and biology societies.
And with your internships, did you find those through UCL, or was that something that you sent speculative applications to get?
I sort of just reached out. I mean, Luckily, so my dad knew somebody at LSHTM, and he said, you should message this guy and ask if he has any space. So I was like, okay, I'll just email this guy out of the blue, because when you're in your second year and you're an undergrad, you have no confidence in doing that sort of thing. So I didn't really know what to say, but I was just like, please, I'll do anything. And he was like, yeah, fine, and created some a little project for me to do to help him with a paper he was writing. I basically just did grunt work for him. It was unpaid, but I was working at the same time, so I was lucky that I could afford to take this unpaid work and then work in the evenings. But there are a lot of good schemes that have funding opportunities as well, so you can be paid and work, and there are plenty of those at UCL, but there wasn't any at LSHTM as far as I was aware, so I sort of took matters into my own hands.
Yeah, no, well done. Okay.
I was very lucky.
So I know a lot of, we do encourage students to use things like LinkedIn to find the right type of people. How hard was it to find a very specific subject to focus on for a PhD? Because it must be quite, you're probably faced with quite a range. What made you go for that particular subject? What difference were you hoping you might be able to make by doing that?
Well, I've been very gradually aware of, as I'm sure everybody is, of the worry that is AMR and the threat that it poses. So I thought, well, when going into looking to study for my PhD, I knew I wanted it to be in infectious disease, but I didn't know virology, bacteriology, parasitology, mycology. I had no idea. I was just like, I just want something. And then I found this on antibiotic resistance, and I read up about it. And it was between this and a couple of malaria ones. And eventually it came down to me going, Dad, which of these do you think will be more beneficial? He just pointed at the antibiotic resistance one and said that one. I was like, okay, that's what it will be. But it really did come down to what narrowed down that choice of those final three was how valuable I thought the research actually was. And then also how interesting I thought it was. And that just comes down to personal preference. I mean, I would just, if you're looking for a PhD, look at the projects that are available, do a little bit of reading around them and just see what interests you the most and which one you think is the most valuable to the scientific community. Or just, to the world. I mean, research has to have a ultimate aim and outcome, doesn't it?
Yeah, no, totally, absolutely. Okay, so that's great advice to look into it, because I suppose you're always thinking with a PhD, you need to have such a level of interest because of the demands it puts upon you to be motivated to get through it because of what you're trying to achieve. I know you're just 5 months into your PhD, but have you had any sense of pressure, or what do you feel have been the kind of good bits and perhaps some of the more tricky bits?
I think probably the most difficult aspect of the PhD is. So what I know we said previously, you have to be interested in what you're doing, but also your supervisor is a real driving force. Not driving force, but your relationship with your supervisor is a symbiotic one, and you've got to help each other to ultimately achieve this research, and their motivation and your motivation need to sort of combine. So I'd say that's a really important factor. And because of the COVID pandemic, unfortunately, my supervisor's office is empty. She is not comfortable with coming in, which is totally understandable. So I'm currently in the office on my own. We talk regularly online, but it's been hard because a lot of the other PhD students do projects where they can work from home. It's been difficult being here on my own and starting on my own. But that's a problem that's been that has come about as of the pandemic, and it's not a usual one, and it's one that I'm sure will be resolved ultimately. But that's certainly created a sort of, I'd say, a bit more of a pressure, because I've got to make sure that the lab is running properly, and I can't quickly fire a question to my supervisor as would be possible if she were here. And also sort of being between the London School of Hygiene and St George's, I basically had to go through 2 enrollment systems, and I've got I'm in 2 departments and I get all the emails from them. So it's constantly like, oh, I'm missing out on this. Oh, I should be looking at this. So that's sort of another pressure, but that's time management and, you know, learning where to put your attention. And that's just a useful skill, to be honest. I mean, I'm just having to learn it earlier, I think.
Yeah, no, I can imagine you're spreading yourself across the 2 sites and different cultures, different places entirely. So it's something else to get your head around. Do you want to tell us about your path up to this point? Did you do anything else? So thinking about your work experience or other outside of your studies experiences that you've had?
Yes. So leading up to my master's, I did other work, sort of working in bars and sort of project management for a gin company, Sipsmith, what a company, delicious. And it was nice to be involved in that, and it's fun being involved in event management, and there are certain benefits, but you don't so much engage I found I wasn't engaging my sort of problem solving and finding out stuff that nobody else knew sort of aspect that I really enjoy, that you only really get in academia, or at least that I've experienced. So it made me think, right, this isn't right for me. I think I'd like to be in an environment where I'm being more intellectually challenged, and I'm, you know, finding out stuff that nobody else in the world has seen. That's so fun. That's just really fun. So that continued me along my path of academia. And then also I was lucky enough to be involved in a marine research project where I was able to travel to Indonesia with a global project called Operation Wallacea, which takes undergraduate students out and to different countries around the world, from Honduras to Indonesia to places in Europe, and you do ecology research and zoology. And I was lucky enough to be involved in some diving marine biology and ecology in Indonesia. And that was really cool. And I would like to do more of that in the future, but I don't know, I like the lab. The lab is fun. And I like studying infectious disease because although this marine biology is really important, and conservation and ecology is I can't emphasize enough how important it is. It just wasn't as much for me, but I'm really glad that I got to do the experience, and I would like to help out doing that again. So the extra bits of experience that I've gotten going through my studies and getting to here.
Okay, thank you. That sounds amazing. So lovely experiences. And did you come, one thing I haven't established with Jacob, did you come straight from UCL to do the PhD? Did you stop and take a break, or did you go straight on after your master's?
Straight in, which in retrospect, maybe, you know, given the circumstances and the pandemic, I could have possibly have used a year out and then have started in a slightly better, more usual stead. But no, I just decided I wanted to keep going, and I didn't want to lose momentum. I've got good contacts at UCL. I am familiar with doing research. I've done it for my master's. I thought, why stop this? Why not just continue? A lot of my friends have taken a year out to work in industry and then have come back into academia, or have just decided to leave it entirely. Perhaps that would have been, that's something I'll always wonder. Maybe I should have done that, and maybe in the future I'll try and do some work outside of academia and work for a private company. But right now I'm pretty happy where I am. I mean, hardships considered, it's still a fantastic place to be. And no, I wouldn't change it.
No, fantastic. No, that sounds like you've made the right choice for you, which is great. Just thinking about your supervisor, and you were talking about how important it is to make that you will have a good working relationship with supervisors. Do you have any advice for somebody who is planning to do a PhD, and how they can, what steps can they take to make sure that relationship is successful? Is there anything you can do bar working with somebody to check that that's going to be a successful working relationship? Because it can certainly make or break your PhD. So I hear from people that have gone through it. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. I think meeting up and discussing the research proposal more than once, especially so, um, discussing what you would like to do with them, whether or not you feel a same level of excitement or interest from your supervisor, and whether or not you feel that you're, I mean, challenging each other is really important, and saying actually I disagree is good, as long as it's constructive. So just make sure that if you're not agreeing, that's probably a good thing, but just make sure it's constructive disagreeing, where you're coming at it from a different viewpoint and considering different ideas, instead of just outright being like, no, you're wrong, because that's not constructive. So yeah, just as you're discussing the project or developing your ideas and preparing to apply, meet up with the supervisor more than once, and just see, because ultimately only you are going to be able to know whether or not that relationship is going to work off instinct. So you should just see how you feel, and just make sure that the relationship seems balanced and seems like a positive, constructive one.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I would say.
Yeah, great. Okay, thank you. Yeah, I think it's really important, isn't it, to make sure that you know that person, have met with them a couple of times before you've actually committed.
Yeah.
Okay, so in terms of this current situation, you've mentioned a little bit about coronavirus and that side of things. Have you got any other kind of comments to make about how that's affected you at the moment? Is anything else that we ought to be considering about what impact that's had?
I would say to students studying now, don't worry. Don't worry that the universities are doing everything they can to mitigate the impact that it has on you. This pandemic occurred in my final year of my master's. Ultimately, your most important year if you're doing an integrated master's. And I came out okay. I came out fine. I mean, I feel like I wasn't negatively impacted, and I still was able to come here and do a PhD. Despite all of this going on in the world, it might have thrown a bit of a wrench in the works, but ultimately, I mean, I look back on this and it might even be something that's helped me grow. I mean, I'd say just don't look at this and feel that you're disadvantaged in comparison to other years who didn't have to deal with the pandemic whilst they were studying, because your universities are brilliant and they will do whatever they can to make sure that nobody is left behind, nobody is disadvantaged by something that they literally cannot help. So just I'd say stay positive.
Thank you. Yes, no, absolutely. And on that, actually, one of the themes this week with Careers Week is about wellness and resilience and keeping positive in the current situation, but in general as well, because all work comes with pressure, and we know that PhDs can be very demanding. Can you give us a bit of an insight into how you personally deal with those pressures? You've spoken about the fact that you've had part-time jobs, you've had work going on simultaneously, whilst also doing that internship, for example, and then you've got the pressures of this PhD ahead of you to complete things on time and make sure you're making some kind of progress, which could probably be quite slow at times. How do you look after yourself, keep positive and well in general? Advice?
I would say friendship. Yeah, they're the most important things to keep and stay in touch with. I mean, stay in touch with your friends. Just make sure that they know what's going on, and make sure that you don't feel alone as well, because that's what's made this, this third pandemic or this third lockdown so hard, especially, is because it's cold. You can't even go out and go for a walk distance because it's cold, it's sad, and we're not allowed to. So it's made this really difficult. So I would say, just make sure that you're calling your friends, and when you set yourself times and deadlines as well, not deadlines, set yourself limits. So when you get home, or say you stop yourself working at 5:00 and then you don't work for the rest of the evening, you don't think about it, because you need that time to relax, and you need that time to get ready for the next day, because otherwise you'll just end up not enjoying it. you'll dread waking up the next day because you know how hard it's going to be. So you just need to set yourself a limit and say, I'm not working past this, and it doesn't matter if, you know, it means I have to do stuff for longer. You need that time. That time is really important, and you shouldn't devalue it. And also, I know we can't go out now, and you can't let off steam that way. So find something that you love that you can do when you get back, whether or not, you know, it's going for a walk or having a cup of tea or reading a book. Find something that gives you a sense of as close to serenity as you can get, just a sense of calm. There's so much going on right now, and we can't control it. But you can try and help yourself get through it. You can just be kind to yourself. Be kind to yourself. Be kind to yourself.
No, that's very good advice, I think. And like you say, variety, making sure that you insist on having variety so that you give your brain a break. And also you function better as a result, don't you? I think that's the thing. Once you turn your attentions elsewhere, your brain can kind of relax, and new ideas come, and it can be really fruitful time actually when you're not stressing all the time and keeping on at the same thing constantly. You need that variety.
Yeah, for sure.
Thanks, Jacob. So I think I'm just trying to see. I was going to a couple more questions really for you, and one of them is about where are you hoping this is going to take you longer term? Have you had any career ideas? Are you not feeling? Obviously, you've got a bit of a while to go with your PhD, but do you have a vision of where that's going to take you in academia, in maybe going out into the wider world of work?
My ideal situation would be that this PhD is amazing and I find the next CRISPR-Cas9 system, and then I become a Nobel Prize winning scientist. So that's you know, my pipe dream. That is not gonna happen, let's be honest. But you know, out of this, I will hopefully become good enough of a researcher that I can go off and join another lab as a postdoc. I'd like to travel a little bit as well, maybe do some research in another country, maybe Japan or something. And yeah, I'd just like to see what there is out there in antibiotic resistance research. And when I did that conference in my fourth year, I was lucky enough to meet Adam Rutherford, who has presented on the BBC. Fascinating man, really personable, and talking to him, it just seems so exciting to get involved in science communication. So I think that's where I will also invest some energy. I'd like to be able to present my information to the public and inform people, and everyone wants to be on TV. To be on TV would be fun. So hopefully something like that, just something involved in science communication.
Brilliant. Okay, so it's great that you've got ideas, and you're sort of thinking even beyond it as well, that you're starting to plot what's there in future. But there's lots of opportunities, aren't there, both inside and outside of academia with PhD, with what the skills that you're developing. What do you think are the most highly prized skills that you get from doing a PhD? What do you feel you're going to get most importantly, apart from the kind of knowledge side? What do you think you demonstrate to people by doing it?
I think you demonstrate that you can take a project and from a nebulous idea, literally just some research that people have done, and somebody's thought maybe this could be interesting, and you turn that into a whole piece of research. It teaches you tenacity, commitment. It teaches you, I'd say most importantly so far, the ability to deconstruct a hypothesis and test it in a controlled way where you account for everything that could go wrong, and any way that somebody could say, oh, but what about this? You haven't thought about this. You're taught to think, somebody could ask me that. I'll do something so that I can prove that I have thought about it, and that doesn't impact my hypothesis. So it really teaches you to ask the right questions and explore them in the right ways. What else? I'd say sort of so far, as a result of the pandemic, it's taught me to be a lot more independent, but I'd say that would be an outcome of any PhD, just perhaps a little bit more down the line. So that's a very, very useful aspect of doing a PhD, is you learn to be independent,
Mm-hmm.
and you make the project your own.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes, no, definitely. And then I think all of that involves leadership, it's attention to detail. You just take responsibility for things, don't you? And you come up, you make your own decisions. Based on it. So
Absolutely.
No,
you're basically your own boss.
Yeah, and I think one of the most interesting things that I've realised since being a careers consultant is that the very few people that actually do end up in academia from doing a PhD, and how you can straddle so many different worlds with the skills that you've got, depending on where you want to go. You can either take advantage of the general skills that you've made to apply them in a higher level within a more of a kind of commercial setting, or you can work to do further research, work like say passing on and communicating your ideas like you are planning to do as well, Jacob. So there's lots of different options. It's not just a kind of conveyor belt through to academia. Okay. My last question to you, Jacob, is going to be, what advice would you give to students at the moment? So that any undergrads, perhaps just in general, but also particularly maybe to those that are considering doing a PhD, maybe one day, maybe not straight away, but perhaps that they're just curious about that as an option in future. What advice would you give?
I would say, don't rush yourself. I think there's a lot of pressure nowadays to get to where you're going as fast as you can, because once you're there, you've made it. If you ever watched a film called Soul, what a great film! It's on Disney Plus. I'm not one for advertisements, but I'd recommend that film. Very much made me think about the journey that you take to get to where you want to go, and there's a lot of pressure to just get there. I'd say no. Take your time, think about what you're doing, whether or not you're on the trajectory of where you want to go, and don't press yourself to be where other people are, because they're doing. Everybody says this all the time. You know, everyone's got their own path. I mean, it's completely true. Don't rush yourself, because you might end up much further down the line, somewhere where you don't necessarily want to be, because you rushed yourself and you didn't take enough time to think about it. That being said, take opportunities that come up. If you get an internship and, it's a couple of months, it's only a couple of months, you might as well take it. You might enjoy it. You might hate it. If you hate it, then you don't have to do it again. And, you can avoid that area of whatever it was that you did. So just take your time, but say yes to things. Don't, commit to something that's absolutely massive and takes 3 years of your life, unless you enjoy it and you want to do it, or it gets you to somewhere where you really want to be. So even then, don't force yourself into it. Just take your time and think about whether it's what you want to do. And if you do want to do it, you'll love it.
No, I think that's fantastic advice, Jacob. That people just don't need to I think it's particularly important to not feel like any pressure from what everyone else is doing, but to do it at your own speed, but also to get involved and try things out. Because like you were saying, if you don't like doing something like an internship, what does it do? It's giving you great information about what you like and dislike, which is priceless, that you don't want to have to go down that road in future. But everything's a stepping stone to something else. It's always got a benefit to it, hasn't it? So it's just getting out there. It's so much better than doing nothing. As long as you're moving in the right direction. Isn't it?
Almost felt like I was contradicting myself as I said it. I was like, yeah, take your time and think about stuff, but also do loads of things. do the right things,
That's my take on it, but I think it's just, yeah. But no, that's fantastic. Thank you so much, Jacob. I think that's really inspiring, and I think we've really got the essence of how important, what PhDs are about, how important they are in terms of furthering research within scientific research and making improvements to everybody's lives with what you're starting to do, but also how satisfying it can be going through the process, but to not go into it with any illusions of what it entails. So thank you very much. And good luck with your PhD.
Thank you very much.
And we'll be putting
Hopefully,
this up
won't be alone for much longer.
No, you won't be alone for much longer, I'm sure. But anyway, thank you. And we're going to stop the recording now. So thanks a lot, Jacob.